Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Cults to Consciousness. I'm joined in studio by the Amanda Rae.
Did you guys miss me?
Yeah, we always have good times, good conversations. In fact, we just filmed about 3 hours worth of spilling the tea on our past relationships. We meant to do one episode with both of our relationships. We had way too much to say, so we did an entire episode for my channel about her relationships, an entire episode about my relationships on her channel. There's a lot to say.
You guys are gonna like it. It's basically the whole time. It's like we're either me or you was like, and then.
But wait, there's more. So if you want all of that juicy gossip, you're just gonna have to wait a week or so, and we're gonna release those. But today we thought, why not run it back while she's here in town? We're just gonna do all the things together and talk about our cults. So we thought we would do a little culty comparisons episode. And we felt like the easiest way to do this would be to just run through the BITE model. So if you're not familiar, it's by Dr. Stephen Hassan, BITE. We have behavioral control, information control, thought control, and emotional control. And basically, loosely speaking, if your cult has all those things, or even some of those things, you may be in a cult. So we're going to go over those, see what it's like, compare and contrast between the two. Now, obviously, there's going to be similarities because they're both stemming from Joseph Smith, the founder of Mormonism. But the order, the fundamentalist group that she's from, is very, very strict and does things more to the extreme. So we're going to see like where things were the same and where they were a little bit different. Yeah. So thanks for being here, guys. I'm going to go back to the comments here. Hey, Val, little shout out. We love Val.
we talked about you, and you'll see.
Oh, yeah, we did. Val's a good guy. He was also from the order. Someone just asked here, I'll just put it on the screen. Jonathan's home doing mods too. Thanks, babe. Jenna says, can the BITE model be used for abusive relationships too? I personally think yes. I definitely think, and as we just talked about with our relationships, they can definitely be culty and cult-like situations, and you can compare and contrast the patterns of coercion, control, and manipulation. So I definitely think that some relationships can fall under the BITE model.
Yeah.
So,
especially with like the cults. Well, while we were talking about our toxic relationships, it was like, oh, this is very similar to the cult mindset.
Right, and that's why we wanted to talk about relationships, because we think that it's incredibly easy to fall into toxic relationships after you've left a high control group, because of the cult mentality and cult programming that you're used to falls right in line with those toxic relationships.
Right. And I know a lot of you guys have messaged me personally on Patreon or even commented on my YouTube. You've said things like, what I have explained, my culty background has resonated with your background of having narcissistic parents. So I think this could resonate with people who grew up with, like what you were saying, you come from a cult, you get into toxic relationships, you came from a narcissistic home life, you're going to be more susceptible to have a narcissistic partner.
Yeah, for sure. So getting into the BITE model, behavioral control. So these are, it's pretty simple. They control your behaviors. So I'll run through a list of things that I can think of off the top of my head for mainstream Mormonism, and then you can piggyback on that.
Okay.
Sound good?
Yes.
So things as simple as, and let me preface by saying, I really do feel like Mormonism falls under the BITE model to a T. When I was reading the things online, I was like, oh, when I realized that Mormonism can be classified as a cult, but it's definitely more of a covert cult where it's a little bit more secretive. People don't really notice it as a cult or think it's a cult because everyone just seems so happy and perfect and loving and family oriented, but I think it's more of a psychological cult. So everything listed under the behavioral pattern or behavioral category, I would say it's more of you're guilted and shamed if you don't do these things. So no one's gonna force you to do these behaviors, but some things you may get punished for, and other things it's like, well, you should have known better. So that type of thing. Okay, so I would say the easiest one is you're supposed to go to church on Sundays, and all of the extracurricular activities, especially the family home evening, isn't highly encouraged, where you do a Sunday school lesson at home with your family. So almost every day of the week you are doing something for the church, including going to the temple and doing temple services and temple practices.
Yeah, definitely. We didn't have the temple or there were certain things that you guys had that we didn't have, but we still did like the, I think you guys call it, what do you guys call it when it's the singles ward and stuff like that?
The mutual?
Classes? Do you guys have classes on the
Young
weekends
women's?
though?
No, mutual would happen on Wednesdays.
Okay.
Like the young men would do something and the young women. Is that what you mean?
Yeah, we had, and I really think that they made sure that it was on the weekends so that we weren't doing other things on the weekends. But yeah, so you have church on Sundays, then you have, I think we called it young people's. We would go on the weekends, and then also we did the dances that we were supposed to go to on the weekends. That was our only we liked those because it was like social gatherings. But I think even on top of that, which you probably relate to this too, you're supposed to be praying every day too. You're supposed to be connecting to God. And for us order members, 7 o'clock every day, we were supposed to be meditating.
At night or in the morning?
So there was 7 a.m. And so the really good ones would do 7 a.m. and noon, but most of us just did noon. So, and if you were in school, which was the private school, the bell would ring and all the kids would bow their head and do meditation.
Oh.
If you're at home, you'd bow your head, do your 5-minute meditation, and then you do the memory gems, which was, it's my firm resolve and fixed purpose to give my all to the Lord. We're all chanting this thing together. So it's just like further
indoctrination.
Yeah, indoctrinating. And there were times where we didn't do it because our dad wasn't there, and he would get upset that we weren't doing meditations when he was gone. So yeah, definitely the pressure of, why didn't you meditate? Why aren't you praying? Why aren't you checking in with God? What are you meditating for? They're even wanting to make sure that you're meditating for the right things.
Yeah.
So
for me, it's just keeping you busy. So if you can keep someone physically occupied doing a whole bunch of things, they won't have a lot of time to sit and think for themselves. That's my opinion. So other behavioral things, like you're expected to go on a mission. If you're a young man, now they're pushing it on the young women too even more. Whereas before, when I was growing up, there was not a focus at all on the women going on a mission because they wanted you to get married instead. So the missionary thing, which you guys didn't have missionaries because you wanted to keep the bloodline pure. Right.
Well, and it was also, we kind of marketed our church as like the chosen church. And so it's a secret of only the chosen one.
Yeah, so you don't want outsiders.
You don't get to come in here, yeah, unless you're worthy, right?
Yeah.
So that would defeat the purpose if we were being missionaries. Also, obviously, what are we going to knock on doors and then skip the people that are not white? Too, right? Because they're racist.
Yeah.
So missionary work would not have panned out for them at all.
Yeah. Other behaviors I think this would be behavioral control. Yeah. Where they control what you eat, how you dress. So with us, wait, did you guys have garments?
No, when you are at your funeral, then they would dress the body in garments. But no, they didn't do garments when you're living.
Interesting. So for those who aren't familiar, garments are something that mainstream Mormons have to wear. And even FLDS, they had the ones that went to your wrist and to your ankles, which were how they were originally. Garments were originally back in the day.
Did they have a little open thing so you could go potty?
Yes, you could go potty. Yeah, like a little butt flap, I'm pretty sure. But garments today in the mainstream Mormon church, they've gotten shorter and shorter and shorter. When my mom was in, I remember she couldn't wear shirts that were shorter than the sleeve. Now it's super small cap sleeve. Yeah. And before she had them to her knees, so they're like biker shorts that she would have to wear under her pants or her shorts, so her shorts couldn't be shorter than her knees. Now they're a lot shorter, I think maybe mid-thigh. Wow. Correct me if I'm wrong, but they're definitely not to the knee anymore. And
don't they also have symbols on them that mean something, right? Okay.
Yeah, there's stitched symbols on the nips and the navel. the nips?
Why?
Yeah, I don't know. I never had them, so I didn't go through the temple.
God first. There's like a little saying on it.
Amanda. They're actually Masonic symbols. They're like compass symbols and stuff. I remember seeing them. They're stitched on. And when you get rid of your garments, you're supposed to cut out the symbols, cut out the nips, and then you're supposed to, I think, burn them, but they're not as strict anymore. I don't even think they were supposed to touch the floor, but I don't know if they care as much anymore. Back in my grandma's day, you were supposed to have sex with them on. You could never take them off. It was a whole thing.
Whoa, you have to shower with them on, bath with them on.
Behavioral control, controlling someone's underwear is a really big sign that you might be in a cult.
Exactly.
And then when we're talking about the word of wisdom, so Joseph Smith created all these rules about no drinking alcohol, and then he said no hot drinks, which they translated later to coffee. And I'm like, what about hot chocolate? They don't really care about that, even though they say it's about the caffeine when it comes to coffee, but there's still caffeine in hot chocolate, so that even doesn't make sense.
But and when they have a swig on every corner of Utah, and they're all
What's a swig?
the swigs where you drive through the swig drive through and
Is
it's
that the
soda
pop?
pop. Yeah,
The pop bars.
that's caffeine, is it not?
Yeah.
That's what it's hypocrisy.
So, I mean, strict Mormons won't drink any pop with caffeine. I didn't know that that was actually a rule until way later, because I remember fighting against it when I moved to Oregon, and they're like, you're not supposed to drink caffeine. I'm like, that's not even a rule. Why are you making stuff up? And it wasn't even until a couple years ago that my mom was like, oh, no, that was a rule. I just didn't like it, so we didn't follow it. And I was like, Mom, you rebel, you. I didn't know. So yeah, the word of wisdom. Did you have anything like that?
Yeah, we ran by the same
The same rules.
No, the word of
drinking?
wisdoms, no drinking alcohol, no coffee. I think gambling's on there, but we.
Oh, you're not supposed to gamble.
Yeah, but we, for whatever reason, the order likes gambling. And I was raised on gambling. And I did not know that that was something that was against the LDS church until we brought face cards to my adopted family's house.
Oh,
to teach them how
yeah,
to
those are not-
Yeah. And they were like, it's okay. They like made it an excuse for us, but I didn't even realize it was bad to bring face cards.
So that was a rule in my mom's day where they weren't allowed to play with face cards, even if it was Go Fish.
Wow.
But then it changed when I was growing up. Because she told me, she's like, oh yeah, we couldn't play with face cards. That was a big no.
What's the reasoning behind that?
I think if I were to guess, I think it's because it mimics tarot cards, which actually tarot cards comes from a deck of cards. If that's like the history of it. So I don't know if they think it's witchcraft or something. And gambling was a hard no. Yeah, even making bets, I remember, was a no. So... Okay, so
What?
Someone give Val a Coke, please. I don't know what's going on in the chat, but let's find out. So, Jonathan, if you have any questions that you want to pop up on the screen, we'll kind of do those in between. Are there enough women to marry all the men, and what happens to the men who don't get a woman? That's a you question.
Yeah, I guess for the order, but I kind of have a similar question for your group.
Okay.
For the order, no. The rate that they are marrying women, like obviously Paul has 27 wives, and then Daniel has like 14 wives, and then each of the brothers have like 10 plus wives, most of them anyways. My dad has 3 wives. So it's like, at this rate, you're going to have single men. And it doesn't really matter to Paul as long as like him and his family's taken care of. That's also why I believe they have that whole bloodline rule where they make sure that the girls are marrying up. So the girls are always marrying someone who's more Kingston. Does that make sense? To keep that bloodline pure. So what happens to the non-Kingston men? There were a few that were Hanson. For example, if Gerald's mom married someone else, sorry, Val, he's in the chat. If his mom didn't marry Daniel, married someone else, he would have not even been Kingston because his mom is of Hanson bloodline. Mm-hmm. They're not even Kingston. So a lot of Hansons had a really hard time getting married because they had no Kingston bloodline. Some of them just had to leave. Then there's also other bloodlines that are just so far down the Kingston totem pole that they're not even going to get married. A lot of the times they will look at women in the FLDS to try to bring them into the group. So you'll see the oldest unmarried man being like 40, maybe 50 years old, and the oldest unmarried woman being like 18, 19. So yeah, it's a very dysfunctional way of living for sure. And that was one thing too. I was like, if God is directing this, and this is of God, and he's, we're marrying the right people under your direction, wouldn't he be magically giving us more women?
Yeah.
To make it possible?
Yeah, to live polygamy.
Yeah. Was there a lot of single people in your group that just never got married?
Yeah. So here's a rule, which is really sad. Did we just talk about the singles group? Or was that in our other episodes?
I think we've talked about that in one of the episodes, yeah.
I'm so confused.
We've been filming so much.
What have we talked about already? So the singles ward, if I didn't talk about it, I'll talk about it again. Sorry if I'm redundant. Once you turn 18, you go to a singles ward, and you can't go to the family church anymore. So ward just means church. And then when you're 30, they kick you out because you're too old, and you clearly will never get married. So you just get kicked out of the singles
Oh,
ward.
that's so much pressure.
It is, because I remember being in it and feeling so sad for like that one 29-year-old girl or guy. I'm like, oh wow, they're about to get kicked out. They're so old. I feel so bad that they haven't gotten married yet. And the fact, I wonder if it's changed now. I really hope that it has, because I remember just the judgment that you would put on, and a lot of times they were people who were married and divorced and in the singles ward, you know, already divorced with kids because they get married so young at 18, 19. And so, yeah, there were people who once you turn 30, you get kicked out and you have to go to the family ward, but there's no single people really in the family ward. So you never find anybody.
It's like it's kind of embarrassing, it sounds like. I would just stop going to church
I
at that
know,
point.
it would
Like,
be
I'm
embarrassing.
done.
And then you are just destined to live a life as a virgin forever, which is even more sad.
Do you ever find a pattern in the people that had a hard time getting married? Or is it divorced people that now people don't want to marry them again because they've been divorced?
Well, from what I've seen, and this is probably biased just because I've only really seen that climate in Utah because of the people that I'm still connected to in Facebook or whatever. I've noticed that people who get divorced and have kids often marry another person who's divorced with kids, and they just combine families because they feel bad. I don't know. They get each other. Mm-hmm. I think it's more rare for someone who's never been married to marry someone who's divorced with kids. But I could be wrong. I mean, I only see what I see.
Yeah.
So
you've only witnessed in your
in
ward,
my circles.
yeah. That's interesting.
Yeah.
Wow.
So is there anything else behavioral? I mean, I'm sure there's so many different things that we can think of. Behavior.
We did talk about too how in that last video how, because we were talking about our dating life and how it was hard to trust our intuition because we were taught so much to just blindly trust, to blindly follow and have faith. That's something that
Follow the leader no matter what.
Yeah, just have an undevoted, something that doesn't even make sense too. Like, you're following someone that hasn't earned your respect. You were just born to respect them.
Yeah, you're just told to respect them. So I feel like that would probably fit under the thought control.
Okay.
So turning your thoughts to the leader no matter what they've done. Other thought control things that I can think of would be the mental manipulation of, let's say, well, that's even emotional control. I'm getting them a little confused or mixed up. Thought control, I think, would be self-policing. So you have someone under your wing or under your control, under your thumb. If you don't even have to punish them, they'll punish themselves for something.
They're already guilt-tripping themselves before they even... And I think that the bishop stuff and confessing, that really feeds into that, like, because they're not going to know if you're doing these bad things, but you're so guilty in your own brain that you go confess.
Did you have confession?
No, we had more of, the order standards that you follow. And if you get in trouble, people were very encouraged to tattletale on each other.
Oh.
If you were BOSing, breaking order standards, your own best friend, this is the shitty thing, is you would always wonder who the hell tattletaled on me, And you would find out later that it was your best friend, because they're trying to save you from yourself, save you from going to hell, because they want to be in heaven with you. So they're like crying and they're conflicted because they want you to go to heaven, but they don't want to turn you in and be a rat.
Oh.
But then you turn around and you're just like, you little rats, you tattletale rats.
Yeah, I feel like you can never really trust anybody. I don't know what's
part.
worse, telling on yourself or having your best friend tell on you.
Yeah, but I always understood why they were doing it, but to me, I was like, I don't believe that this is an issue, and you're making my life harder. Now I'm gonna go get beat by my dad because of you. Keep your mouth shut.
Yeah, I mean, it definitely should be up to you whether or not you tell somebody about something that you've done in your life. I just wonder if the feeling would be worse knowing you were betrayed, or if you had to go in and say it yourself. We had routine confessionals, so I don't know if they still do this. If anyone knows, please let us know in the comments, but we had to go in at least yearly by the time you turned 12 and have a bishop's interview, and he would ask a list of questions, and that included the law of chastity. So you would have to say if you were breaking the law of chastity, kissing.
So they would ask you, okay, so they went through like a list. Like,
Yeah.
have you been doing good in this area?
Yes.
Have you been doing good? And then you
Yes.
have to be like, no.
Have you been paying your tithing?
Wow.
10% of your income. And yes, they expect children to pay. They don't enforce children paying, but they do expect it because they teach you to do it young. They're like, we want to get these children used to paying tithing so that it's easier when they, like, your chore money.
Oh, like your allowance?
Yeah, your allowance. You would have to pay 10% of your allowance to the church, even though they have billions of dollars. So you guys were just expected to give everything to the bank, and then they would tell you what you could pull out, or your dad would.
Yeah, well, they would have your bank account that was the amount that was in there. It was always inaccurate, though. Like, I remember I had worked my whole life, and I had got to, like, 15 years old, and I looked at the account balance, and I was like, $2,000? My whole life is $2,000?
Yeah.
Like, there's no way. I was working my ass off. So I really think that, because I became friends with some of the leaders' kids and like the leaders' brothers' kids, and they all had like $40,000+ in their account. So I'm like, interesting how my dad's less related and we have less money over here, and you guys seem to have lots of money over there.
Yeah. And also, to clarify for people who aren't familiar, they would have jobs that were created by the order, and that's how she wasn't really getting paid for some of the stuff she was doing.
Yeah, it's all rigged and controlled, and there was even stories of people who worked at the school for months and they got no paychecks, and they were told later, oh yeah, we weren't paying you. Like, they would just flat out say, yeah, we weren't paying you. And there's arguments like, you weren't going to tell me that you weren't paying me. Like, oh, we're telling you now.
Oh my gosh, that's awful.
So yeah, it's similar to you guys though, where like we are very encouraged to, like, if you were to find $20 on the street, you go turn that in first, give them their 10%, and then they'll give you, your money minus $2 or whatever.
Yeah. Wow.
So
someone was asking in the chat, how do kids pay? Do they send around a plate? So in Mormonism, you fill out, like, it's almost like a deposit slip. I don't really remember what it looked like. I should look it up to refresh my memory, but you would just write on there how much you were giving them, and then you would put the money in the envelope and you would give it to the bishop's office or whoever took care of the money in the ward. So it was never that awkward passing around the plate thing that they do at other churches. And so you would just put it in the envelope, give it, they would write it down. So they had a record of how much you were paying, and so at the end of the year they would have a tithing settlement where you would have to go in and they'd be like, well, Shelise, looks like you only gave us $100 over the year. Pretty sure you made more than that. You ready to settle up?
And sounds like tax season.
It's like tax.
Oh my gosh.
And they would expect you to pay more. And then I think I can't remember if they said you were expected to pay the money 10% before taxes or after, but I know that the really good Mormons would pay before taxes, like 10% of their, is it gross is the bigger one? I always get them mixed up versus net.
Meaning like after
before
everything
the
was
government
paid.
took money out.
Okay, yeah.
So even if you only made $1,200, if your check before taxes was $1,500, you should pay 10% of the $1,500, even though you didn't get that much.
No, I don't like that.
No.
Some of these people are like single moms too. So
Yeah.
that's the part that's messed up too. Like in the order, it was like, you want my mom to pay 10% when she's struggling to feed all 10 of her kids?
Yeah.
Like, come on.
Yeah. So Ken was saying, I was told before taxes. Yeah, so that's a thing. Gross is before tax. Thanks, guys. I always get it backwards. Okay, so paying the church. All right, so let's go back to, we skipped information control. This is a big one.
Oh, yes.
So I was always taught that I shouldn't read anything that wasn't from a church-approved source, especially if it had to do with the church. Even authors, they're like, you should really read books by people who are LDS. And so I think I've told this story before, but I'll tell it again because it's relevant. There was a class where they were talking about the afterlife, and my mom was reading this book about this guy who died and came back to life, and he was describing heaven and how the flowers sang. And so in this lesson, I was like, I know, my mom told me that the flowers sing in heaven. And I was probably like 10 or something. I don't know. I was a kid. And they were like, who told you that? And I was like, well, this book that my mom was reading. And they were like, well, who wrote it? Was he LDS? And I was like, I don't know.
They're trying to decide whether or not to promote it or be against it.
And I was like, I don't know, thinking, why does that matter? And she was like, you really shouldn't read anything from someone who's not LDS. Basically, like, the flowers don't sing if a Mormon didn't say it.
Wow.
I know. I was like, oh, but I really liked the idea of flowers singing in heaven. Like, why is that a bad thing? Who cares if flowers do or do not sing?
Because what songs were they singing? Were they hymns?
Oh no, it was Backstreet Boys.
Backstreet Boys.
So, okay, that's information control as far as limiting what you're exposed to. Also, in that same vein, saying that you shouldn't trust anyone who is left because they're apostates and they're led by Satan. So if they bring you this information like Joseph Smith translated the Book of Mormon with his head in a hat, don't believe them because they're apostates and they are anti-Mormon, and anything that an ex-Mormon says is anti-Mormon, and don't listen to them. So it's just another way to keep you in this bubble and teach you to demonize anyone who's left the religion so you never ever question it.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, it's very similar with the Order. Obviously, like, I am a demon from hell because I left, and I not only left, but I'm talking, in their eyes, talking bad about the Order. In reality, just talking about what happened to me. But you know what's interesting? So yeah, it's like, don't talk to any of the ex-members. They are fallen away, they're bad, whatever. But remember the comment someone said, is this related to toxic relationships? And we were talking about toxic relationships. Could it be that this relates when you're with someone who's constantly saying, don't believe anything that my toxic, crazy ex said?
Yes.
With every single ex they have.
Thing.
Yeah, there's got to be a pattern, and it's very similar to like set it up so that you trust only them.
Yes.
And then again, isolation too. What's happening right now too is isolating. You can't get any other information unless it's exactly what they want you to think. So they don't want you to go beyond what they're telling you is true.
Yep.
So.
Yeah, and also controlling the information within their own lesson plans.
Oh, yeah.
So painting a completely different story than what actually happened in church history happened all of the time. So do you guys remember the tarred and feathered story of Joseph Smith? So how was it told to you? I'm curious.
That he was a martyr, basically, right? That he was trying to preach the truth, and it was kind of like Jesus Christ. How if Jesus Christ were coming down here today, we would kill him just like we did back then. And that's how Joseph Smith was. Joseph Smith was trying to preach the true word, and he was treated like Christ.
So do you know the rest of that story? Did you ever learn the rest of why he was tarred and feathered?
I think someone told me something about a printer press or a little girl, something along the two lines.
The reason, well, yes. Well, the reason he was put in jail was because he burned a printing press to the ground because they were basically higher up Mormons who he excommunicated because they were like, Joe, you can't keep marrying these children, and not children. He married one 14-year-old, and you can't keep marrying other guys' wives. And he's like, what? I'm not doing that. Excommunicated. And then they had a printing press and started writing about it because they were like, hey, people should know about this. And then he's like, what are they doing? And go burn it to the ground. And that's why he was put in prison. But the reason he was tarred and feathered was because of the polygamy, and because these men who were coming to tar and feather him, they were upset that basically what he was doing is wrong and polygamy is illegal, and they brought along a surgeon to castrate him.
I did not know that.
Yes, and the surgeon chickened out and was like, oh, I can't do that. It's a little too much for me. And so they're like, all right, let's just tar and feather him.
Give him a slap on the wrist.
But they're not going to tell you that part of the story in Sunday school because they want you to think that Joseph Smith didn't practice polygamy. However, information control, on their website, they've finally had to admit, because the internet's a beautiful thing and people find out, okay, Joseph Smith married Helen Mar Kimball just before her 15th birthday. Okay, Joseph Smith had this many wives. Okay, like, they're admitting it, but it's tricky to find on the website. It's kind of deep in there.
Yeah, but I think that, well, what do you think? Do you think that they have to say these things because they're being backed into a corner? Because now we're finding diary entries. So they have to defend themselves and give it's like breadcrumbs of the truth.
Yeah.
But it's still frustrating because it's like you have to dig, just like you were saying. It's not on the front of the LDS.org. You have to dig and try to go find it.
Yeah, so anytime someone is like, why are you spreading anti-Mormon lies? I'm like, well, unless you think the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints is anti-Mormon, they're not anti-Mormon lies because they're saying it themselves. You just have to look hard enough. They're just not going to teach it to you actively. You have to find it, and then they can say, see, we were forthcoming all along. It's on the website. Why don't you read the website? So what did they actually teach you about his polygamy as far as information control?
Obviously, it was right. Like, the polygamy was right. Joseph Smith's, we are living the true teachings because you guys fell away from it.
But did they teach you that Joseph Smith did it?
Yeah, they did.
Oh, wow.
They taught us that Joseph Smith had, I remember thinking he had 33 wives.
Okay.
Like, that was the number that he had, and that Emma was one of the first wives, or was the first wife.
She was, yeah.
And they would tell us stories of, like, one of the wives pushed one of the other wives down the stairs, and that's a sign of jealousy, and we don't want to be a jealous wife. That was a bad wife. Do you ever remember that story?
No.
One of the wives pushing the other one down the stairs?
No.
I don't know if that's even true now. Well, I think it is true. Can you imagine having to share your husband with them? There probably was worse than that happening, actually.
Well, Emma, the only reason she found out that polygamy was happening, did you know this story?
Walking in on him.
Yes.
Right? But I was not told that.
Okay.
I was told that it was all consensual.
So that's interesting. So even in a polygamous sect where that is like the thing that you do, they still didn't tell you all the truth about his polygamy.
No. I really think they just used each story to further indoctrinate us with what Paul the leader wanted us to know. Mm-hmm. But they did do, I'm curious if you guys had any, I'm sure sex education was one thing that was ripped from you guys. Yeah. But also we had, because we had the private schools too, and so they didn't want us learning about things like evolution because they thought it disproved God or would make us question God. So they would just rip the pages out of the health books that they didn't want us to learn, out of the science books that they didn't want us to learn. And there was a point where I didn't even know, I went to public school and I didn't even know who Hitler was. I don't know. There was a lot of control on what they wanted us to have and what they didn't want us to have. And then sex education was a huge one too. They just, which is the crazy part, that our religion's all about procreating, yet you're not even going to tell us how to do it.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, we both belong to sex cults, even if people don't want to admit it. There's so much focus on sex. It's like, that's kind of the whole point of the religion. Either don't do it or do it until you die or do it until you can't have any more kids. And they would always say, if you use birth control or if you delay having kids, you're delaying God's blessings, and that's a sin. You need to have as many kids as possible, even like until your health will give out, basically.
Oh, I hate that. It's like the woman her body is no longer hers. It's just a vessel for this
for
cult.
Breeding.
Yep.
Yeah. Okay, let's do a few more questions. Oh, Denise. Thank you so much. Amanda, remember to tell Shelise that she needs to interview the channel Amanda and Shay. What am I missing?
Oh, she's telling me that I should... Have you talked with Amanda and Shay? Mm-mm. Do you know who they are?
Mm-mm.
I thought that you were saying that she did interview them. They are a couple. You've never heard of them? I think
that sounds familiar, but I don't think
It's the couple. Okay, so they were married in the LDS church, and they're such a cute couple. They're here on YouTube now, and they've stayed together even after Amanda's husband had transitioned.
Oh.
And it's such a cute story because it's like that's real love, right? Someone who is really showing unconditional love. Like, I will love you in any form. But the LDS church obviously was like, so they share their whole story on here.
Oh, wow.
I'm shocked you have. For some reason I thought Denise told me that you did know them.
No. Well, good suggestion. Thank you, Denise.
If you could tell them to come over here, let them know that we would love to talk to them.
Okay, Ellie wants to know, in the Kingston group, what happens if a wife's husband dies or is excommunicated? Is she reassigned to a new husband? That's a good question.
If she can have more children, they're going to try really, really hard to get her married faster. There has been times where women are done having kids, but it's almost like they need to have a man over them. So they'll be like, hey, you need to take this one on with your family.
Oh, wow.
So, yeah, it is interesting because we do have an example of that with Priscilla, my cousin Priscilla. Her dad died after her mom only had 3 kids. He had passed away, and he was only like in his early 20s. And so they were trying really hard to get her mom remarried, but her mom's like going through depression, mourning, yes. And so for them to try to push that on her is really frustrating. And they would use all kind of tactics like, you like that guilt thing too, like you need to be having more babies, like your spiritual babies, what about them? They're waiting for you to bring them down here. And so, yeah, it's really... it's sad thinking about it. Like, whenever Priscilla tells me the stories of it, I'm like, that's so sad because that was also her dad too. And like, it was almost like they had to pretend that he didn't even exist and make room for the new guy, right? So that she could bring more babies to the earth.
So in that case, because did you guys you had to have, right? Eternal sealings?
Yeah, so this is the crazy part of that. So there's arguments in Priscilla's case, where does my mom go in the afterlife?
Right.
Which husband?
Who is she married to?
Right. And so in the doctrine, and I think this is in LDS doctrine too, it is the original man that he goes back to.
Yeah.
But the new man, see, from what I've heard, I wasn't in the family, and Priscilla would be better at explaining this, but from what she's told me and what I've seen when I was in the group, he seemed way more possessive and like upset that she was going to go back to him in the afterlife because he really liked her. So he would do things like take the pictures down off the wall. Like he didn't want to acknowledge the dad but in the doctrine, she's going to go back to him.
Yeah.
So it's crazy though. It's like, so you're jealous, but you're over here living polygamy. Yeah. So
That's such
just
a good point.
shut up.
Yeah, I believe the way it is in mainstream Mormonism is you're sealed. Women can only be sealed to one man, but men can be sealed to as many women as they want. So in the case of divorce, you're stuck with the first guy, even if it's an abusive relationship, unless you can get the higher ups to approve an eternal divorce, like a celestial divorce, and then you can get resealed to your new husband. But you have to jump through a whole bunch of hoops to get that to happen.
That's so stupid, because, like, obviously I don't want to be married to my abusive partner in the afterlife. Like, you can't make me do that.
Yes. Okay, so any other questions? Did the Kingston family ever interact with Warren Jeff's sect, the FLDS?
Yes, definitely. There were times where, and I truly believe the only times they went over to go try to help them was to try to get wives. Like, we would try to integrate our men over to go help them, being strong men, helping, like when the flood happened over there, which in hindsight, like, yes, that's great that they were helping, but they always had the agenda of let's bring women over here.
Yeah.
So there are women actually recently that have married into the group, and it was after they do little events and things to kind of get women to, trust them, to get the women to marry into the group.
Ooh.
Yeah.
That's interesting. I wonder what they would have to say, and if the FLDS women know that they're marrying into an incestuous polygamous cult.
Exactly. I'm sure that they don't broadcast it that way. I mean, they do have a website. It's dccsociety.org, I think is what it's called. They have a website, and I'm on there. They don't like me. They have a whole, it's funny how they're God's church, and they have a whole slander section of slandering
exciting.
people.
I feel like we need an episode on that. Just go through the episode, or the episode, the website.
Yeah, and they whoever's making the website watches, because I did do an episode of me scrolling through and laughing at some of the stuff, and there was a section in there that says Amanda Rae, an escaping polygamy producer, and I was laughing on the video. I was like, that's funny that they think I'm a producer.
Yeah.
Right after I posted the video, they corrected it. I'm like, wow, why don't you just link my videos down below? Help me out.
Link my videos. Like and subscribe.
Seriously. But yeah, we could do a whole episode on that. But so on that website, of course, they're not saying we do incest. Of course, they're even claiming that they don't do polygamy underage, and they don't promote underage marriages or forced marriages. And it's like, so you're gonna go ahead and lie on the internet now. But it's not illegal, I guess.
If I were to put myself in the shoes of someone in the FLDS, I think maybe it would be more attractive because you guys are injected into mainstream society and you don't have to wear all those dresses.
Right. It seems like a step up.
A little bit less controlling, but ultimately so controlled still.
Oh, yeah.
It's like the facade of freedom, but it's not real freedom.
Exactly, because you're still, and this recently happened. I had a friend call me that had left the FLDS, and she had a sister or a friend or close relative. There's so many relations because they're so big families, but basically someone she knew was engaged to someone in the order, and they were basically going to leave the FLDS to join the order. And she was like, what do I do? Like, what should she know? And I was like, well, it's obviously her choice if she's an adult, but let her know that they are going to pressure her to sign 10% forms. They are going to pressure her to work and be a part of the Lord's work, meaning they're going to want you to sign inventory forms. And those are the main big things, I think, is like stripping your rights away.
Yeah.
But I guess if you come from a religion where you didn't really have any of that anyways, you had a storehouse that you were taking from, it may not feel like it's so stripping. I don't know.
Yeah, interesting. Let's get into I wanted to finish more on the information control because I wanted to know if you guys had, just like the regular Mormon church, have your own magazines and prints, like the Ensign. We have the monthly magazine that you would get that has all the talks and inspirational things.
I wish we had. I'm trying to think. I know we had if there was an important lesson, then they would pass out something about, I think it was from there was something they passed out that was like a 1950s newspaper that was saying how to be a good wife. Do you know what I'm talking about?
No, but that checks out.
I found it and I did a whole episode on it because it pissed me off so bad. But they passed this thing out to try to be like, this is the bullet points for a good wife. So when there's important things, they will pass those out. I think mostly the things that they made were like cookbooks with like the names of different women in the order that had made up a recipe, you know?
Oh.
But as far as newsletters, when I was there, I don't remember there being anything like that. They could have progressed though and started.
Yeah.
What were your magazines like? How to
The
be
enzyme.
modest?
Yeah, I mean, I'm pretty sure I didn't read them, but I know that we got them in the mail. And of course, you have to pay for all these church materials. But yeah, I mean, the mainstream Mormon church is honestly just a giant corporation. They have it figured out. They are extremely organized. They know how to market. They know how to get people in. They know, I mean, they are so smart that they have people who pay them to go out, spend 2 years of their life to bring people into the church. They
Paying
let
money
me say
to
that
work
again.
for them.
Yes.
Yeah.
They find young kids to pay them to bring them more members who will make them more money. It's brilliant,
Yeah.
right?
Now, after hearing you say it like that, I don't feel so stupid for our exes and what we did in those scenarios.
Yeah, give us some credit. Okay, so let's go to emotional control. So this is one that I think of the fast and testimony meetings. I don't know if you guys had these where you have to get up once a month. You don't have to, but you feel this burning in your bosom and you feel really guilty if you don't stand up and bear your testimony, which goes a little something like this. My name is Shelise, and I know the church is true, and I love my mom and dad, and I'm so grateful for my family, and I just want to say that I know Joseph Smith is a prophet of God, and I'm just so grateful to belong to the one true church, and I had an experience where I didn't have any money to eat, and then someone gave me their leftovers, and God is good, so I'm so glad I paid my tithing.
That's similar to the order, literally. So what we would do, like the New Year's meetings, and I felt so much pressure from my dad. He'd be like, go up on there, go. He would bribe us to do this because I think it was more for show, like, look how righteous my kid is.
Yeah.
But it was similar, like, my name's Amanda, my parents are this person and this person, so that they could know which kid it was. And then you go on to be like, I know that Brother Paul is the man on the watchtower, and this is the true work of the Lord. We are so grateful to have this testimony. Da, 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 da. Some people did have stories, but yeah, so grateful that I didn't have any food, and then I went dumpster diving and I found some. I found some food in a dumpster.
God is good. No, we never said the God is good thing because we didn't say God. It was Heavenly Father. It was only Heavenly. My Heavenly Father was looking out for me, and I knew that either I could use this money to buy food or I could use it to pay tithing, and I chose to pay tithing because Heavenly Father always provides, and that's when I found a burger on the floor, and Heavenly Father was looking out for me. And then I knew that Heavenly Father was just testing me, and I passed the test because
I lived and I didn't die. I'm still here to tell the story.
Yeah.
I believed some of the stories, though. There was one story.
Of course you believe them.
There was this one, though, where the guy was like, and the car fell and it almost hit me, but it was this close, and I knew that when I was saying my prayers that morning, and I was like, oh my, are you guys hearing this story right now? This is crazy.
This is miraculous.
Like, I wanted a standing ovation for the Lord or for him or whatever.
Yes.
But now looking back on these stories, it's like, it's all set up, though, and your brain is like programmed to believe
it's confirmation
this magic.
Bias.
Yes.
So that's the emotional control that we wanted to get to, which is basically when you set up these scenarios where people tell things that happen and everyone has this confirmation bias of, oh, well, then that means the church is true. And it's just this cycle of, well, if that really smart lawyer or doctor believes it and that thing happened to them, well, what's wrong with me? Why don't I believe it?
Yeah.
And it just gets other people. They even would tell us, if you don't have a testimony, bear it until it's true.
Oh my gosh.
They told us to lie, so who knows who's lying up there. So you get these special feelings where you're like, oh my gosh, that man was saved and he didn't get hit by the car. The church is true. That's emotional manipulation because they are hijacking and monopolizing your natural human responses to make you believe that something is true when it's just a natural human response. And it's normal to have warm, fuzzy feelings when people are telling stories or when people cry. It's normal to get tear up. Like, if I'm tearing up in a movie, I'm not like, oh my gosh, The Notebook is true.
Yeah.
Like,
or
no,
I
I'm
feel
just
the
having.
spirit of the Lord right now
Yeah.
because I'm crying. Yeah.
Yeah, it just means you're having an emotional experience, or maybe you were having a spiritual experience. Maybe you did have a metaphysical experience where you're like, wow, Heavenly Father is really, really looking out for me. That also doesn't equate to Mormonism. That doesn't mean that Mormonism's true. Maybe you just have a connection to God or not the afterlife, God or universe or whatever you want to call it, your higher self. Maybe that's what it is, but it doesn't mean that the prophet is a true prophet. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, that's true. Could the emotional one, could that go under any of the emotional abuses or emotional?
Yeah, like what? What are you thinking?
I really feel like, well, also our emotions were beaten down if they were the incorrect emotions.
Oh, yes, for sure.
Yeah. So if there was times where you started to question or you started to feel depressed or sad after maybe someone telling you this is the person that we've had dreams that you're supposed to marry, and you're sad and you're like, well, I don't feel like I've been impressed to, I feel like deep down that's the wrong thing, then they're like, well, you just need to pray harder because you're getting the wrong impressions.
Absolutely, that's emotional manipulation where only certain things are okay. So if you're not feeling happy, that's probably because you're not worthy enough and you need to repent of something or you need to confess something or read your scriptures harder. So here's a good example of emotional control. When I would have nightmares, I would wake up and be like, it's because I didn't read my scriptures that night.
Oh.
It's my fault.
Oh, so you're just guilting and shaming yourself and
of my unconscious
further.
thoughts.
Yeah, I hate that. Yeah, I think that too. It's affected me now way beyond my childhood because I was suppressing so much for the work of the Lord, right? And the right thing was to always suppress until you are correct. But then it's like you got in a habit of not being able to be human. Not even having a human experience anymore.
Yeah, so that ties back into the thought control where you're not allowed to trust your intuition. You can't trust your own thoughts anymore. Even down to if you lust after a woman and you're a married man, you've sinned and you need to go repent because your thoughts are unclean. So much control and manipulation over something that is usually, it just pops up. It's not something that you're actively thinking about. If Amanda walks by, you're like, wow, she's really pretty. Oh no, now I have to go repent. But it wasn't even something that you actively sought out, and you're self-policing in that way. And so you stop trusting your intuition because your thoughts are not even safe.
Yeah. And then it's like you don't even know who you are because you're so afraid to find out who you are now because you're just constantly sinning, when in reality these are like this is the process to get to know who yourself.
Yeah.
But it's so frustrating because I feel like I would have known myself so much sooner if my parents weren't like slapping the Amanda out of me.
Yeah.
Did you get a donation?
Did we?
I think it's right up here. Yep.
Oh, thank you so much, Little Bee. Just wanted to give some support for the channel. Amazing work you both are doing. You too, Jonathan. Happy Father's Day. Oh, happy Father's Day. Yes,
And
it's
happy
actually
birthday.
his birthday on Father's Day, his 40th birthday. So happy birthday, Jonathan.
Yes, everybody go
oh,
tell
there he
him.
goes. He even
Might
put
be
the comment up. It's actually my 40th birthday. Yeah, that's awesome. Okay, any more questions that we want to get into?
Yeah, and hopefully, I keep thinking of that comment too. Hopefully, you guys are able to put in the toxic relationship in. I'm trying to like relate how all of this could be a toxic relationship too.
Oh, yeah.
But I bet what does it say?
I bet the Kingstons are terrified at the idea of police showing up with warrants to do comprehensive DNA testing.
Oh yeah, and you know that Paul has had his wives go in hiding for that reason.
Oh, he did?
Yeah. He had his sister, who's also his wife, his sister wife, go into hiding. And it's so sad because it's like these women go through so much hell to try to protect him so that he can procreate with his sisters. So he's already gone through going in hiding for having sex with his own sisters and nieces.
Wait, we forgot to talk about something on your relationship episode.
What?
About your husband, your ex-husband. and how you didn't know.
Oh, yeah. So I have talked a little bit about this, but it's always been so like uncomfortable for me because Order people harassed me about it. But I had no idea that my husband was related to me when we got married. His mom's the one that told me.
Oh, why?
And I was like, why did you tell me that? And I remember going through depression because I had fought so hard to get out of the cult. I fought so hard to get away from all the incest. I'm finding this man who I'm not related to, who I'm in love with. Come to find out he was like, I think he's my 4th or 5th cousin, which in hindsight, like, you can't have like inbred kids, and like the issues are
it was far enough away. It wasn't a first cousin.
But so after that, I really beat myself up over it, and I was really upset over it. And then when I first started YouTube, kids from the Order would really twist that knife, like, oh, she's over here advocating that she didn't want to be married to her cousin, but she's married to her cousin. But reality is the cousin they were trying to make me marry was my dad's half brother's kid, and also his full sister's kid, because his parents were siblings. Does that make sense?
Hold on, wait, say it again. Okay, so your dad.
My dad has a sister.
Okay.
And that sister has a kid. And that's my cousin, right?
Yeah.
But she married her half-brother, Paul's brother.
Okay.
Meaning they have the same dad.
Okay.
So this kid has 1 grandpa and 2 grandmas. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So our kids would have definitely had 12 toes, okay? So the fact that they were like, oh, you didn't want to marry your cousin, but you married your cousin anyway, there's a huge difference, okay? A big difference. But also, I didn't even know he was my cousin when I married him. But it bothered me so bad, and I hated bringing it up. I never wanted anyone to talk about it. But at the end of the day, like, what did I expect? To come out of a cult squeaky clean? To come out of a cult and have nothing, no scars or marks or bruises? No.
Did he know if his mom knew?
I don't think he knew either. His mom like informed me, and then we talked about it, and he was like, oh, and it wasn't a big deal to him because he was like, oh, it's like 4th, 5th cousins. The reason why we're so concerned is because we don't want our kids to have any issues, right? And they're not gonna have issues. So to him, it wasn't a big deal, but to me, I was like, I'm disgusted. I can't even look at myself.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, it frustrated me.
Any other? Ellie wants to know, why doesn't the authorities go after these monsters?
They've tried, but they also, I mean, there are names of police officers that we know work with them. And if you think of it too, the Mormon, like the LDS community really controls a lot of the laws in the states. And when we were trying to fight for, I think it was the HB 99 Act, and we were talking about like polygamy and how harmful it is on the kids, when we went to the state, the Utah state capitol, they flat out said, we don't even have like the jail cells, like the capacity to like put all these polygamists in jail. But we weren't like, we want these polygamists in jail. We just want them held accountable.
Yeah.
We and it's not even the polygamy that's the biggest part. It's the incest, right? And it's the abuse and all that other stuff. But I really think that the main reason is it's an LDS ran state, and these polygamists have a lot of money, and they have the money to pay people off, and they know how to go run and hide. There was also a time where they were getting that raid that happened, well, when Jacob Kingston went to prison for the tax fraud. He stole like $500 million from with Levon, the guy from California. So there were people in the Order saying that I don't know how true it all is because I was out of the Order, but I was hearing that there was people that were supposed to be getting rid of evidence, and they were tipped off before the FBI showed up because all the evidence was like destroyed. So take it with a grain of salt, because I didn't watch everything happen, but there's a reason why they keep getting away like by the skin of their teeth. The leadership never seems to be getting captured. It's also like organized crime, right? The ones at the top make sure their names are not on anything. It's really hard to get to them. Because Jacob did end up going to prison. He's in prison right now. But do you know who was pushing him to do all of that stuff? Do you know that he has to go through the leadership to even get a lot of things okayed? So he was, in my opinion, a pawn in the game.
Yeah.
But I don't know.
The system's rigged.
Yeah.
Mark says the Order needs an app like Iceland so you know how related you and your partners are. They're doing blood tests. They're
doing blood tests, and they don't care how related they are as long as they can have babies. Then, yeah. But that's why we're seeing infertility, right? We're seeing men are not even able to get the women pregnant. The man I was supposed to marry, we wouldn't even been able to have kids, I don't think.
Oh, really?
Yeah, because the girl he ended up marrying after I left, she left too and told me about the stories, and he was, what was it called, sterile?
Yeah.
He could not procreate, and we're coming to find out that more and more of Jesse's, Michelle's dad's Jesse, more and more of Jesse's boys are just like, they can't
That's so
procreate.
sad because it's not it's never anybody's fault, but the parents are setting their children up for failure knowingly marrying their sisters.
Yeah, I think it happened to be like too many strains of incest, and now
Yeah.
they can't procreate anymore. I don't know. So a lot of them are doing IVF, but yeah, I have no idea like the actual amount of number. I feel like the number's very high for how many people are actually unable to get pregnant because
Wow.
of it.
And then if a woman can't get pregnant, it's her fault.
Oh yeah, it's never the guy's fault, especially because then he won't get awarded more wives. So they always have to make sure that no one knows it's the man because they want more wives.
Wait, they only get more wives if their other wives have kids?
Well, if the man can't even get his wife pregnant, why would a woman want to marry him? You know?
Oh.
So I had a friend who she flat out said like her husband knew that it was his issue and she had kept trying to go to IVF, but he knew it was his issue, but him and his dad was like, we're going to say it's you though, so that he can get another wife. And so she knew, they all knew that they were in on this secret. But that's kind of messed up too because like now you're lying to the new wife already
Exactly.
before even knowing her.
Yeah.
But,
Oh, wow. What would they do in that case? Would they have someone else do it?
well, there's the IVF that's worked for some, but I've also heard rumors that, and this is again rumor, I wasn't there listening to this conversation happen, but I've heard multiple Order people tell me that there was a one scenario where the girl could not get pregnant by her husband, but her husband's older brother was like fertile myrtle over there, getting all of his wives pregnant, so they went to the clinic and they said it was her husband's sperm that she was putting in her, but it was actually his brother's. I don't know how true that is, but it Order people were telling me this. People currently in.
Well,
So, who knows? I think that they will go through drastic measures just to get those babies down to earth. And they justify it, like it's Heavenly Father's souls. We need to get them here.
yeah, yeah, exactly. Are children born with a disability made to marry?
So like you're saying if someone has Down syndrome, if they would make them get married. I did a whole episode on this one, and there was a woman who has Down syndrome who they forced to marry as a polygamist. And
Oh, wow.
I can't remember the name of the episode I did. I think it's just called what does the Order do with members with Down syndrome? I can't remember the name of it. Maybe we can link it down below if I can remember it.
Yeah.
But because she could procreate, because she had a uterus, they were going to marry her to a man and make her have a baby. And they did. They said that her mental capacity was like of a 10 or 11-year-old, and they were making her be with this guy. Yeah.
And made her have children.
Yep. But
then who takes care of the
exactly.
children?
It's
because
like
it's all on the woman, right? She
Yeah.
has to work and take care of the family.
So someone else had to end up adopting that child. I think they realized how stupid they were being, and so they didn't keep making her procreate because it was also traumatizing to her because she couldn't understand what was happening.
Oh my gosh, that's
So
awful.
ridiculous what they do. It's like Handmaid's Tale. Like they're also so behind on like education. They don't really care to learn about the disabilities of the other members. So there's been stories where sadly they'll just lock them in a closet. Like so much. Sorry to get dark, but that's the truth.
Whoa.
And if they can use them, they will. They'll put them to work, and if they have a uterus, they'll try to get them married. Like, you're going to have the same fate as the rest of the members. You're a robot.
Yeah. Well, we've been talking about, since you've been here watching our little baby Rhea, and me telling you things like, oh, this is a thing, and you were saying that they have so many kids, yet no one educates them on how to take care of a baby. So what are your thoughts about that?
I know, and I'm learning so much from her, which is making me kind of sad because I'm like, wow, I didn't know all of this stuff goes into raising a child, even though I was raising children in the Order. And Rachel was even saying, she's like, do you feel like this baby's more fussy than normal babies? And I was like, no, I think we were trained to put the baby in a cradle and let it soothe itself.
Yeah,
like we were trained to do
cry
that,
out.
so then babies didn't cry a lot because they didn't get to be soothed by their moms. We were trained
Yeah.
also, don't spoil the baby by holding it too much. Like we were told that there is such a thing as too much affection. And obviously also when the leader is saying things like a 2-month-old baby better be obedient, and if they're not obedient, then you gotta smack it into them.
Wow.
There were mothers that were doing that to their kids, but luckily there were some moms that were like, I can't do this. Like
Yeah.
this is my child. I'm not gonna do this. But other moms, I feel like, were so like drained and already had 10 kids, and it was probably just easier to just abuse the child.
Oh, yeah,
So,
that breaks my heart. Well,
yeah.
for the record, it's impossible to spoil a baby. Hold them and love them because it gives them better attachment theories as they grow older. They will be more independent and level-headed if you, quote, spoil them, give them all the love and affection that you can.
Yeah.
So
I wish that I knew that when I was younger.
Oh.
But
Emily says, "How is your daughter doing?" She's doing great.
she's so cute.
Daddy has her right now. I can see her on the camera. You guys can't, but she's on his lap. We love her so much. She's the best.
Yeah.
Any other questions? Jonathan's looking right now. Is there anything we didn't talk about? Can I send you some coffee? Mary wants to send you some coffee.
I will always take coffee. Always.
That's awesome.
And I need to open my P.O. box again.
Wait, were you guys allowed to drink coffee?
No, coffee was against the word of wisdom. So, but we would sneak it. There were a few members that would sneak it and then just try not to get caught. But because it's, I don't know, we didn't have soda either, but coffee was a big no-no. I almost felt like it was like alcohol, almost.
Yeah,
but, yeah,
and
we
tea
did.
too, right? Unless
We
it was
had
herbal tea.
We did have tea.
So you could drink black tea?
I'm pretty sure. Maybe that was something that my mom just didn't care about.
Yeah.
But she did care about the coffee thing, but I don't know.
We weren't allowed to drink tea unless it was herbal tea. So because of the caffeine, like black tea and green tea. And I remember them telling us it's only for your benefit because black tea will turn your insides like they use black tea to tan hide. And so it's going to make your insides like leather if you drink black tea. And I love it now.
Where are they getting this information from?
They just assume that if they use black tea for hides, that's what it does to your stomach.
That's so weird.
I don't know. Maybe there's a study out there. Who knows? Does anyone in the order smoke and drink?
Never openly, but you know what's funny?
What?
All the kids that are, okay, I'm sure that there's multiple kids that I don't know of, but all the kids that I hear about that are the ones vaping behind their parents' backs and smoking behind their parents' backs are usually Paul's kids. I always wondered, why is it always Paul's kids? But I also think it's because Paul's kids are probably very struggling because Paul's got 27 wives and he sees the kids like maybe once a month, if that, if you're lucky, right?
Yeah.
So, but yeah, there's a lot of young teens that are going out and sneaking out and drinking and partying, which is crazy though, because I didn't know about this when I was there. Even though the gossip was Amanda's like a little slut that runs around with boys and drinks and da-da-da, all these bad things were said about me. I didn't even know there was parties like that going on under my nose until after I left and I would hear stories. And then people would leave and be like, oh yeah, you know, this person, he was doing this all the time. And I was like, Paul's son, huh? Interesting. But yeah, it's definitely not open, and it's hush hush, especially if it's Paul's kid. I really feel like Paul's family, or Paul in general, is all about just make sure no one else finds out. Like the reputation matters more than what you're actually doing because you're the leader's kid. But I've noticed that in LDS stuff too, though. Usually the bishop or the is always the worst.
Yeah.
Why do you think that is?
Because they're the most oppressed. It's because when you put too much pressure on someone, don't do this, don't do this, don't do this, it makes them want to do it more. And so they rebel. It's the parents who are more lax. I feel like I had really great parents in that sense where, I mean, my mom would kind of use guilt sometimes or be like, you know what's best, Shelise. But always in the sweetest way. It was never an angry thing like, Shelise, you know what's best, you know? So I would always be like, you're right, Mom. I know what's best. I shouldn't wear this tank top. You know, it was like stuff like that.
I am Heavenly Father's daughter.
And he loves me. Amanda, are you still a lawyer coming from Jonathan?
No, I dropped out of school. Just kidding.
Goes, no.
So many people ask that though, but it's Andrea that's the lawyer. She's amazing though, by the way. I'll call her all the time when I have lawyer questions. I recently called her when I had that ex trying to be crazy.
Oh, right.
Which you'll hear about on Shalise's.
Coming soon.
Yes. But yeah, Andrea was going to school to be a lawyer on escaping polygamy, and then she passed the bar and she's doing great in Washington. I'm the one that's a college dropout. That's one of the most common questions. And are you still married is like the top one of the top 2 questions.
Yeah.
But
she's not married.
I'm divorced.
She's not available.
Yeah.
Whoops.
I know.
Sorry.
I'm dating myself.
I'm trying to protect Amanda, and I'm like,
I know,
making her eat the mic.
After me confessing to you, you're just like, bitch, you can't date anyone anymore.
That's not what I said.
No more. No, I'm saying that to me too. I'm like, what are you doing?
She's out here, and guys are bringing her all these roses. We got like a house full of roses back home.
Oh, yeah, you did see. I do like getting roses, that's for sure.
Okay, Jacob says, hey ladies, I watch both of y'all's channels and find them interesting. Thank you both for your commitment to truth and freedom. Aw, thanks, Jacob.
Thank you.
That's very nice. Amanda's the absolute best,
Oh,
right,
I love
Crystal?
you, Crystal. She's so sweet. She's
Yeah.
always there for me.
Yeah,
Cheering
Crystal's
me
great.
on. One thing that I've loved about having, and I've said this so many times, but I really believe that having so many, what did Val say? Don't forget to like the video. Oh, thank you, Val.
Don't forget to like.
Having so many people, when you don't believe you're great or you don't believe you deserve it to be valued and whatever else, having so many of them say it to you constantly, I feel like it really changed my brain chemistry to be like, I do deserve to be loved. I do deserve to be like valued.
Yeah.
And so that's why I say it all the time. I feel like you guys are sick of hearing it, but I'm so grateful for the community that you guys have given me to be able to be like, you guys are right. Like I should be able to have the love and respect that I didn't get to have as a child.
Yeah,
right?
I agree.
So I appreciate you guys.
Yeah, we appreciate you. Here's one. Cat.
Is it
Broad.
donation?
Yes. Do drug addictions get replaced by other things?
What does she mean by that?
I'm guessing it means like if someone, because you can't do drugs in the order, are there other things that people maybe get addicted to?
I definitely feel like when I watched my parents' relationship, it was an addiction. I feel like it was an addiction of a vicious cycle of like love, hate, upset, infatuation, and it was like this weird thing that was happening in her brain. And maybe it was just a narcissistic relationship.
Wait, that's so interesting because those are the relationships that you've been caught up in.
I've just been called out.
Wait, did we just find the source? Because maybe that's all that you've ever witnessed?
The addiction, yeah.
You've never witnessed, or at least you didn't grow up with seeing healthy relationships play out. You've only seen the toxic cycles.
Right. But I feel like I knew, when I left, I kept being like, well, I know what I don't want. And I tried to run from what I don't want. But each relationship, I was like, oh my gosh, am I being my mother right now? I started to feel like when I would catch myself making those excuses, I'd be like, wait, my mom used to make excuses for my dad. Like, there was a moment that is burned in my brain I will never forget. She wants me to forget, but I will never forget this. She was so upset at my dad one day, and he would just leave to go to another wife's house because he didn't want to deal with it. And that wasn't fair to my mom because she's, like, trying to work through something. So she stood behind his car. Like, you can't just run away every time there's an issue. And I, as a kid, I was like, what's going on? I'm running outside. And I saw him in the car, looked behind, saw her there, turned around, and gassed it. My mom jumps, and he, like, from my childhood memory, he barely missed her. And I told my mom, I was like, he just tried to run you over. Like, are you really going to take that? Like, you need to protect yourself. And instantly she was like, he wasn't that close. Like, she was instantly making excuses for this abuse.
Yeah.
So seeing that as a kid and being like, I never wanted that, and then coming into a relationship where there was never physical abuse, but still, there's some verbal abuse or like emotional abuse that's worse, in my opinion, because the healing the wound and finding the heal is hard. But there were moments where I was like, wait a minute, why am I making excuses in that same way that my mom was making excuses for someone else not caring for her safety? So yeah, I've definitely found myself in relationships where I'm like, wait a minute, what have I done?
Yeah. Oh, wow. Someone said, is it common for boys who get out to get addicted to drugs?
I think it's more common that I've seen to be men over women. And I don't know if it's that, because my therapist told me, and this was the most brutal thing I ever heard him tell me. This is my new therapist, and I made sure it was a man so I could try to work on my relationship with men.
Interesting.
He told me, he was like, do you think that the way that you are with relationships is the way that drug addicts are with drugs or alcoholics are with alcohol? I was like, what do you mean? He's like, when an alcoholic is sad, then they turn to alcohol. Maybe when you're sad, you turn to a relationship. So you're a relationship-aholic. And I was like, ooh.
Okay, but that's a normal thing to seek out love and affection from somebody.
But that is why I think that women tend to not be on drugs when they leave. Because they quickly get into relationships, maybe.
Maybe I'm offended because I did the same thing.
You're getting triggered.
Yeah.
But like men, I don't know because I'm not a man, but there's more commonly men who get addicted to drugs who have left, or men who have committed suicide who have left. And I'm wondering if that is linked up with them having a harder time connecting with others, or connecting with their own emotions within themselves, because it's been so, we all know this too, it's not even just a cult thing, it's a society thing. Act tough, don't cry when you're a man, and so it's harder for them to even regulate themselves, so then they turn to drugs and stuff like that, whereas a woman may be easier emotionally, and maybe their drug of choice is just a partner.
Yeah.
I don't know. And that's speaking from my experience. Like, I went to a marriage, and then I went to another relationship, and then another. You'd think I'd be done. There was a point where I was like, I think I'm going to be a lesbian now because this isn't working.
You're going to give it a shot? Try it out?
I mean, I did go on a date with a girl.
She went on a date with a girl and did she like it?
I talked about it on Patreon. It was
Wait,
more...
Did you kiss her?
No.
Oh.
You know what's weird is I have kissed girls, but this, because it was a date and because it was like, I wanted to make sure that I respected her and I paid for the meal and I wanted to treat her the way that I would like to be treated.
Interesting.
So I was like, I don't think I should kiss her. It was like so
you were
weird.
You were trying out the man role for
I was
a second?
a man for a night and I actually didn't like it at all.
Oh,
but
so
I was a good date because I feel like, to me, it was more of like, I want to be able to, and I wish every man would do this, treat the person as if you would like to stay friends with them. Not like you want them to, for the night. Like, I feel like a lot of guys are just, this is just for the night. Like, I don't really care about you.
Yeah.
But
Did you stay friends?
We're still friends. We still text. We're going to FaceTime soon, yeah. To me, I would rather it be a friendship because I don't even know if I'm in the right state to be dating right now.
Yeah.
But if you give me a dozen roses, I have to go on a date with you.
Now you know how to woo Amanda. Give her a dozen roses.
Mm-hmm.
Molly, thank you so much. Molly says switching addictions is very common. Yeah. I think if you have that addictive personality, or I think it's actually something that's genetic within certain people having addictive traits, which is why some people who have alcoholic parents choose never to drink alcohol because they don't want that trait to express itself. Yeah, that makes sense. Does the Kingston group have temples? Do they do endowments and temple work? And do they do sealings in regular church buildings?
They don't do, I honestly think the only reason they don't have temples is because they don't have the money. Well, they do have the money, they just don't want to spend it on that.
Yeah.
They have businesses, they have all the properties, but for the marriages, the ceremonies is a big thing. Like, you need to be sealed to your partner. Mm-hmm. So they will have, like, the first wife will have the legal marriage, but you have to have the spiritual marriage as well. And then obviously all the spiritual wives will have a very small spiritual sealing, and it's usually like Paul himself, like, ordaining them, or a man of priesthood doing the ceremony. And they read off this paper that's like the same in every, I don't know why, I don't know if that's a thing with LDS, where the sealing is read off as if it's like it's same with like the code, the secret handshake, like you have to say it a specific way. Word by word. Yeah
I think it's all the same.
So I don't know if it's similar though, the wording, maybe it's the same wording. We could figure that out actually, because I know the wording that the order uses. But
yeah, we could figure that out.
Yeah, I think they do sacrament now, but they didn't when I was growing up, and you guys do sacrament.
Yeah, that's interesting. Okay, I just had a thought, because the original temple ceremony had the blood oaths in it. Do you know if your temple ceremony has the slitting of the throat?
No, because we don't have the temple, remember? So we don't need to do the ceremonies for the temple.
Yeah, but that's part of getting sealed, like the endowments.
Oh, no, we don't do any of that.
Well, it's not part of the wedding, but it's part of... That's so interesting that you wouldn't have any temple ceremony, like the endowment session, because that's something that Joseph Smith put into place.
Yeah, I don't know why they don't.
So you're not really fundamentalist then.
That's true. That could be a good point to be like, oh, so we're taking polygamy and consecration, but we're leaving this really
out
important
the
part out.
Ceremony.
Yeah, but we do the baptisms. But maybe they're just not ready to use temples yet. I don't know. Maybe they have a reason as to why they're not doing that. They're just cherry picking, honestly. They're just doing whatever they want to do.
They're like, multiple wives? Yes. Blood atonement? No. Which I'm not mad about. Blood atonement's kind of... No. We're going to do an entire episode on blood atonement.
Really?
So if you guys are interested, we got someone analyzing Mormonism. Julia, shout out to you. She's got a great Instagram, and she brings receipts and shows the documents of different things. And she is going to come on and talk about blood atonement and how people were killed for God to atone of their sins. It's really dark, so
Have you ever talked to anyone from the LeBaron group?
Yeah.
You have?
Yeah, we talked to the two sisters who were on the documentary recently.
Oh wait, yeah. I think I remember seeing a snippet of that. That's awesome.
Yeah, they practiced blood atonement. There was a whole documentary. I forgot the name of the documentary now.
Daughters of
the Cult.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yes.
So yeah, they are the polygamists that believe that they totally. And when I was talking to this girl who joined the order from the LeBaron group, this is the only way I even knew this, was they basically believed that if you're not going to church, then they can save your soul by just killing you. Yeah, and that it's kind of like that whole thing where like I'm tattletelling on you to save you, but to them it's like I'm killing you so you can't sin anymore.
So you can go to heaven.
Yeah,
and
it's like a love thing.
Yeah, it was a Brigham Young thing. I'm gonna find out from Julia if Joseph Smith is the one who started it, but Brigham Young carried it out quite a lot when he settled Utah, but you had to slit their throat and spill their blood on the ground to atone for their sins. Mm-hmm. So thank you, Diane, for the super chat. Love you two together. Thank you so much for being here. Amanda helps me so much, says Donna.
Oh, yay. I'm sometimes I'm like, my trauma stories better help someone out there.
We're doing our best.
I'm just kidding.
Well, I think we're coming to a close here, unless there are any more questions, Jonathan, that you want to put up and have us answer. But we're already in hour 15. We've been recording since like 2:00 today.
Yeah, nonstop.
I'm going cross-eyed.
Like, my voice is hurting from talking so much.
I know. Tony wants to know how long the order's been around.
1935 was when it became a church, was the 1935 meeting.
There you go. Founded by Charles Ian Kingston. Oh, Eldon.
Yep, Eldon was the number one. Yep, 1935 was so it's really only not even been around for 100 years.
Wow.
Crazy.
Thank you so much. Oh, that's Julia from Mormon Stories too. Yes. Also, I know a lot about cults, and LeBarons freak me out.
Oh, yes. The LeBaron story was the one that... So I did a whole episode on this when I did creepy stories for my cult, and I learned that the blood atonement, the man who became the leader killed his own brother to become the leader. It's like, what? Because his brother was preaching wrong things.
Yep.
You guys are crazy.
He got a little jelly and was like, no, you guys need to follow me. So he just went and killed him.
Yeah. But all in the name of the Lord.
In the name of the Lord.
In God we trust.
No, in Heavenly Father we
trust. In Heavenly Father we trust.
Don't get it twisted. All right. Well, I think this about wraps it up, everybody. Thank you for being here. This has been fun. Hugs to you both. Hugs, virtual hugs. And expect 2 more episodes all about relationships. Amanda tells all about her relationships, and we relate it to being in a cult. Mm-hmm. And I tell almost all on her channel of my relationships. It's so complicated. I just have stories for days. But
I know, I feel like after I'm done editing it, I'm going to be like, we have questions. I have some questions for you.
Yeah.
I think you guys are going to like it because it was good. It was a really
juicy.
Good episode.
It's one of those where I'm like, should I be talking about this? Because I feel really stupid. But she said the same thing and she did it. So I was like, I have to do it too.
And I did it like multiple times. It was like hitting my head against the wall over and over.
So did I. Well, here we are. All right, guys. Thanks for joining. If you haven't already, go subscribe to Amanda's channel.
Thank you.
Jonathan will put it in the description. Any plans to do more TV shows? Possibly. Maybe. Stay tuned. We'll see. Maybe. Yeah, in the works. The industry is a little crazy right now. They're not really accepting new things because of the strike. Long story. If you haven't subscribed to Amanda, go do so.
Yes.
And if you want to.
Hi. Also, we might be doing a Patreon live together.
Oh, yeah. So if you want to become a patron, how do they find you?
I don't know. I'll put it in my it's usually in my links in my description box in all of my videos. But Amanda Rae, just culty things on Patreon. I'm trying to do a live where we can all hang out and maybe meet Baby Rae.
Baby Rae, she's my daughter. Yes. Okay, guys, super sticker. Thank you, Mark. Appreciate you.
Thank you.
And everyone have a fabulous night. You can get some merch if you want. You guys know what to do. I don't feel like saying all the things. You know.
We're tired.
Have an amazing night.
Love you guys.
And until next time, follow your highest excitement. Be conscious and be well.